Hey Rachel,
Hey Ryan.
how are you?
Good.
Oh, that's good to hear. So we're back at it again.
Yep.
This is another episode of the Yum Yum podcast, our show Yum Yum Trek, in which we are rewatching Star Trek Discovery for the second time. Oh, well, this is our first time rewatching it, second time watching it. Don't get all tricky on me with those scientific details. Rachel, why are we called the Yum Yum podcast in general? Why have we adopted the name Yum Yum?
There was a definitive moment in season 2 of Discovery where the line Yum Yum was uttered and we were both forever changed, as was the world. So that is why we are the Yum Yum podcast.
Well, how did it change the world? Like, we know how it changed us. It made us smarter, stronger, handsome, but sexually virile. But how did it make the world different?
I feel like it's impossible to tell because it is the stone that has set
The Rosetta Stone?
ripple, a ripple throughout the universe, and we can see it in ourselves, but we cannot truly see the impacts.
Yeah, you're right. So, Rachel,
Mm-hmm.
we're covering episode 8?
Yes.
Of season 1
Mm-hmm.
of Star Trek Discovery.
Yes, because we are doing them in chronological order, and this is episode 8 of...
Yeah. Chronological of the release date order. I don't know. There's a few timey-wimey episodes, so we are doing that. So we will be talking spoilers and all for that. This episode is called Vis Pacem Bellum, which, Rachel, is Latin for...
If you want peace, prepare for war.
So good John Wick used it, huh? John Wick 3.
Parabellum.
All of this for what? Because of a puppy?
Wasn't just a puppy.
This episode's description on IMDb goes as such: the USS Discovery is tasked with a high-priority mission to the planet of Pavov,
Yeah.
and learn the science behind the Klingons' cloaking technology. I feel like none of that's
No.
true other than they go to the planet,
They
really.
go to the planet, and it's an important mission, but it's an away mission for 3 people.
Yeah, it's only high priority for 3 people. The other crew, they're doing stuff. And they
but
don't
that-
really learn the science behind that from that. They learn the science about the Klingon vessel. They don't know how it works. They don't know anything. They only know that they can't fire while using the cloaks and that they can't detect them while they have the cloaks.
Yeah.
That's all they learn, which is something I feel like they already knew.
They didn't learn that from
The,
Pavo or the Pavovians.
from the episode, really.
No, we just get told that at the start of the episode.
Now, Rachel, I was looking on IMDb,
Mm-hmm.
getting the episode description up, and I found, like, we did not read the IMDb description of Star Trek Discovery,
The show.
of the show. So, get this. I had a good laugh about this. I was reading this on the toilet,
Let's-
so I was in a real mood. 10
Let's
years
see.
before, again, this is a show that wants to be its own thing, yet it also needs to be connected to Star
sure
Trek.
we haven't read this before?
Hold on. 10 years before, Kirk, Spock, and the Enterprise, the U.S. Discovery... That's a weird sentence.
Yeah.
10 years before, Kirk, Spock, and the Enterprise, the USS Discovery discovers new worlds and life forms as one Starfleet officer learns to understand all things alien.
No.
Who's that officer?
No. No.
Is it-
no.
Is it
No,
the
no.
xenoanthropologist?
No.
Is the person
no.
learning
There
all-
is no saving that. It is just so wrong.
It's
than
broad.
it being about Starfleet and 10 years before.
And Discovery's
and
in it.
On Discovery. Like,
That's it. So yeah, the descriptions are all over the place for that. So now you can understand why I was having a good laugh when I read that, because Michael's a xenoanthropologist who knows everything about aliens. In fact, out of
grew
all
up
of
on an alien world.
but out of all the characters that we encountered in our crew, she's probably the one who knows most about aliens.
Yes.
If this was about, say, Saru or Stamets, perhaps? Or
No.
Tilly? Or literally anyone other than Michael, who already knows she's an expert. She's a xenoanthropologist. Let's not forget that. That comes up in this episode.
But you are accurate.
What did you think of this episode of Star Trek Discovery?
It wasn't offensive.
Okay, so you liked it. So it's a yum yum from Rachel Sliwinski on this episode. End of episode, people. It was a great time.
I haven't fully made up my mind about it. It's bad, but I don't know how bad I'm gonna feel about it. Because a key criteria to get just a yum from me is that it makes me angry in some way. And at this point in time, I don't feel angry at this episode.
No.
It's just like I forgive it for its nothingness.
I agree. There's a forgiveness of the nothingness. Now, how I felt about this episode was I want to give a big shout-out apology to the Lethe episode, because I said that episode was boring, but this episode had literally nothing. That episode at least had the Lorca stuff. This episode featured nothing of interest. All the plots were so nothing that I even just now looking at you just remembered that Paul had a plot in this episode.
Yeah, that was a
non-plot. It's a setup plot of ooh.
Yeah, it's setting up something. But we'll
or it's paying off something at least.
We'll get to that later.
But
Okay,
this
so
episode's
can
a
we-
nothing episode. You could skip. The only reason this episode you need to see it is it's setting up the next episode in terms of the shit fight that's going to go on. Other than that, there's nothing. There's literally nothing to gain from this episode. Oh, but Ryan, what about Michael and Ash's blossoming romance?
We get to see them make out for a minute.
You know what? Literally,
You forgot, didn't
I
you?
didn't even recognize that happened. I've forgotten that. Did that happen? When did that happen? Did I miss that? Was I just glazed over? Was I just too busy writing my less than 2 pages worth of notes, which is unusual for this show?
After she's just like, no, I've never had baked trout before.
Oh, the classic baked trout scene. Of course, the lake house scene. Oh my god, in which he says, I would rather let fucking thousands and thousands of innocent people die in war so that we could continue making out.
I want you just to insert the abomination that they do of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Because that people just need to be reminded of what they do to that, because
we need to hear some of the great versions of that, and then put a juxtaposition of this.
Yeah, there's a little
Christ.
In any case, were I to invoke logic, logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or the one. The needs of the many outweigh
the needs of the few.
or the one. Why would you do this?
Because the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many.
Doctor, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Fuck, we're talking about your life!
Well, maybe we just leave that transmitter alone. You can't go back to prison if we're still at war.
the needs of the many.
Worth fighting for. Or worth dying for. So are the needs of the few.
There was no point in the episode when I was invested in what was happening. This is a close, this is a close approximation of what they think a Star Trek episode is, which is a boring away mission.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I love Star Trek, but there are tons of away mission episodes and tons of any type of episodes of Star Trek that are both good and bad. And there are tons of boring Star Trek episodes in which they go on an away mission. That is apt, but that doesn't mean that those episodes still aren't boring and I don't like them. And this episode is boring and I do not like it, and it's the lowest rated episode of Star Trek Discovery. And I think it deserves that, or at least it's one of the lows.
Yeah.
This doesn't even crack to a 7.
It's very common in Star Trek to have episodes that you like that either for the A plot or the B plot, and one of them is shit.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, oh, like...
Remember that episode where the B-plot of Data trying to learn what humor was far more fascinating than the Romeo-Juliet plot of the A-plot of like, oh, charismatic space bandit man is trying to bring these two together. Ooh. You don't remember that plot. You remember Data trying to learn how to do comedy because that was fun.
Yeah, and him being
and
in
him
the bar.
and him doing his arm gestures back and forth, imitating the stand-up comic.
Yeah, and how he thinks...
See how we're talking about anything but this episode? Because it is dull as dishwater. There's not even a funny thing in here. The funniest thing that we already went over, the trout scene, that was the funniest thing in the episode. There's
fact that we were both hopeful, because the start of the episode opens with a battle, and we were both hopeful that it was going to be a simulation.
Well, I said that because there was a computer game noise sound effect that sounded like it from an arcade game or something. It was very distracting. I'll play that specific sound right now. And it's very weird that was in this. I mean, maybe it's a reference to some kind of sound design, but it was very oddly put in this opener.
We started with the episode going like, oh, it's gonna go boom boom, and then it made a beep.
And then it made a weird glitchy beep, and I was like, oh, not boom boom?
What now?
You know what they say, Rachel?
Okay.
In space, no one can hear you scream, but they sure can hear, and instead of an explosion, computer bloop sound.
I'm just gonna start going through my notes.
Oh wow, you really want to dive in hard. This episode's your favorite, I can tell.
He left the robot lady in command of the bridge.
Oh, Lorca? Well, that's because Saru wasn't on the bridge, and Arium, I guess, is like the next in charge of taking over the bridge, which is
apparently.
Well, this is setting it up because in season 2,
do.
Arium has a lot of responsibilities.
Yes. But it's still dumb, and she should not be the next in charge.
Why? Because she's a robot lady? They let Data be in charge?
Sir, we have to get this ship to a star-based medical facility.
It seems, Doctor, that Mr. Data has other plans for the Enterprise right now.
When we have the annoying Vulcan...
Admiral guy?
Yeah, the Admiral guy. He's not that annoying. It's annoying that he's there in a hologram.
Oh, right, yes.
He is saying that they have news that he's
Coal of House Core.
Coal
of House Core.
Coal
of House Core.
Cool shot!
I said it correctly. Sorry, I didn't do it well enough.
Cool shot!
There you go. So old.
Cool shot!
Stop it. They're saying that he's united the houses, but we were already told that.
No. So actually, what he said there is, we now know for a fact that all the Klingon ships have been adapted to the cloaking technology that they have acquired from the House of the Dead ship.
Yeah.
In that certain quadrant from the...
was saying, I swear they were like, in the previous episode, it was just like, he's united all of them. Yes, it is new that all of them had the cloaking, but...
I think it was in the previous episode, well, Harry Mudd, but the one before that, Cornwall was like, he's uniting them all. There's these houses that aren't there yet. So this is what this is. But Rachel, here's the thing that bugged me about that scene. Mm-hmm. He says that our intelligence has shown that they got this adaptive cloak technology from that ship, from that battle.
Yeah.
Right? Why did Starfleet let the House of the Dead ship remain in anyone's hands for 6 whole months? If they knew it was still there, and they knew that was the specific ship with the cloaking technology, why did they leave it there? Like, why did the Klingons leave it there? Because
why did the Klingons leave it there? Why did Starfleet
I have an answer for you.
leave the Shenzhou there?
I have an answer for you. For dramatic convenience.
Okay.
That's the only reason. It's for the writers. It's for the writers just to go through a thing. They want the plot to go for a dramatic convenience. If Starfleet knew it was there, why did they leave what is basically a weapon of mass destruction for Starfleet? They're treating it like that. This is a super weapon.
Okay, let's just move on.
No.
No,
That's
no,
what
no.
the show wants you to do. They want you to just move on because this opening sequence was bombastic as fuck
means
because they're doing
nothing.
the Star Trek
It means
Discovery
nothing,
thing
and I
of
don't care.
But
Can
Rachel,
I say one of Saru's lines?
classic. Go on.
It was not painful, but disorientating.
Oh yes, that. But Rachel, I don't want to breeze over that intro shooty bang bang scene because this is
You want to go back to the boop sound?
This is a prime example of what we were talking about a few episodes ago, in which Star Trek Discovery has a pacing issue, or in terms of everyone needs to be speaking fast, camera needs to be spinning fast, action, lens flares.
It doesn't matter. It just happens and it doesn't matter.
Well, it could matter, but
It
the
could,
execution
but
of
it
it is so.
doesn't.
The execution of it is so in your face, bombastic, and you're thrown into the middle of it. And that can work in many different situations, not just in Star Trek, but in many things. You being thrown in the middle of a chaotic
you mean
situation.
It could be better if it was written well and organized.
It's not even
in
necessarily
a
the
cohesive
writing.
manner,
Yeah.
and they actually know what they wanted to do, and there was a point to the show being on the air.
Oh, Rachel, there's
All
a
of
point.
those things could help.
Rachel, there
but
is a
they're
point.
not what we get, Ryan.
Rachel,
they're
you're-
not what we get, and we know that it gets worse with Discovery, and we know that Picard is even more a piece of shit.
Rachel, you're being very argumentative and very negative on an episode that you didn't mind. Here's the thing. There is a point to
This
Star
is
Trek Discovery
the-
existing. It's to keep the IP up, okay? We got to keep the brand. We got to keep the IP.
I know why it exists.
Oh, we all do. Brian Fuller wanted to make a show, and then they kicked him out of the show. But this is the thing. I get so annoyed because we've been...
it and move on.
But we need to languish in this because this is what the show wants you to do. We've talked about this before. This opener is just so bombastic and over the top and bizarre. And
just
what
wanna-
does it serve the rest of the episode?
I just-
Do we get to really mourn the loss of that other ship? Do we
no,
really get to
Lorca
do
says now is not
the time? Now, and
there will be time to grieve. Now is not it.
and that time never comes, by the way.
No,
But
no,
what I mean
no.
about this is that
Maybe
bombastic
at the start of season 3, when they're 900 years in the future,
950
they'll be-
years.
they'll be just
But Rachel, here's the thing: you're breaking down.
broken me. Why is
Because this episode's so boring that something's got to break at some point, and the opener is it. But the thing that I have an issue with this opener is it's so bombastic, it's so over the top, it's so fastly paced. But what does it serve the rest of the episode other than it sets up one thing, that the Discovery ship cannot be in contact properly with the away mission because they're having to do whatever. But
they're further away.
it's setting
that
up
was
that for this singular episode. For the greater narrative, it's setting up the old, we now know that they all have cloaked ships and they can't fire while they're cloaked. But for this purpose of this episode, that typical Discovery, fast, boom, lens flare, glitchy noise, boom, noise. We don't have time.
Fast forward.
It serves nothing to this episode, which is, in all fairness, a slow, methodically paced, character-driven episode with that typical hints of a Star Trek episode of an away mission in which we've got a science thing of an alien race that's so alien to us, and we are so alien to them that there's misunderstanding. But that opener completely ruins the tone of the episode as a whole. Although I find this episode boring, the tone and the pace of it does not match that first bit. That first bit feels like, hey, we got to keep people's interest up. We got to have boom, yelly. We don't have time to mourn because the rest of the episode's going to be boring as boring as dishwater.
Yeah.
We've got to jingle the shiny thing in front of the audience because they're dumb. They don't have an attention span for what will be a very dull, slow, methodical episode. And that kind of shit is what bugs me because it kind of feels to me that the opener doesn't even have trust in the rest of the episode.
No. Okay. So we have said in the past that we would like Discovery to slow down and take a moment and develop characters. And some would say that that's what this episode is.
That's what it's attempting to do.
What would you say to those people?
This episode is attempting that. It truly is. Not as deeply as previous episodes, I will say, that have done this, because it's also trying to be a wholesome Star Trek thing in which we're communicating with aliens who don't fully understand and they cause havoc at the end of the day. The issue is, whose journey as a character are we fulfilling? Is it Ash Tyler? Is it Michael? Is it Saru? Because at the end of the day, Saru's the closest, but a lot of his stuff is still off screen. And he's not like, because Michael's our main character, we're focusing that story through Michael and how she's really adjacent to Saru's story. Again, this is about Saru, but he feels adjacent to what is his own story. And I think that's one of the big flaws for why this story doesn't work, is this is a Saru character piece, but since we're so in the boots of Michael, to speak, it feels like Saru's big character thing is a side story to what's happening, but it's the story of the episode.
Yeah.
That's how it feels to me.
And
because this episode felt to me, and I always remembered it as, oh, that's the one where Saru goes crazy, but this is the episode about Michael and Ash Tyler's romance. This is the one that's supposed to cement it. I remember that from the first time, and seeing it this time, it's not really like that, but while we're talking about it, that's kind of what I remember more.
I think part of that frustration of it, what is happening more to Saru than the other two members of the away mission. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, they're not affected by it.
No, they're just like, we're here to do a mission, but Saru is the one that's being altered. But even with the way that they construct scenes and shots, it focuses on Michael and or Ash first.
Oh, yeah.
And then on Saru, and not in a way where it's just like, it's establishing that it's not affecting them. I'm mainly thinking of the scene where, like, Ash and Michael are asleep.
Yeah, and he's freaking out.
And it establishes them first being peaceful, and then Saru's distress.
Well,
but it's just like, it doesn't serve anything to show us Michael and Ash asleep, because we already know that they're not affected by it.
Yeah.
And then it's the same thing when Ash and Saru are talking.
Yeah.
And Michael is still at the center of their conversation, even though
she's not there physically.
She's not there physically.
She's the best. We got told that this episode again, by the way.
And it's
she's
not
right.
what they're actually talking about, but
it is.
And it's just frustrating that they're creating the whole universe of the show around Michael Burnham.
Are you all right?
I lied to you. And Lieutenant Tyler, I attacked you. I could have killed you.
This is a typical compromised crew member. He's been altered. He's the antagonist of the episode. And then at the end,
again,
he has
been done before and done really well in the past.
And done really bad.
And can be done in a fresh new way.
And can be done in a shitty, contrived way many times. He's been compromised, and then at the end, he learns a lesson, and that can be fine.
Did he learn a lesson?
He did. He had his little med-based speech in which he's like, I've always been afraid, and now I've experienced what it was like not to be afraid for one time, and it was kind of scary.
Yeah, but...
And that was kind of something.
But he doesn't express regret for the pursuit. He says that, like, yeah, I could have killed you, and he seems emotional at the idea.
Was he, or was it just because his collar was undone a little?
Yeah, that's what I was. And like it doesn't actually feel genuine. It's just like
they put him in pale makeup this time.
He feels like,
whatever.
The writer's like, he probably should acknowledge that he almost killed both of them and could have killed both of them. And okay,
Let's just keep focusing on the
There's-
away mission plot for the time being,
Yeah.
because the other
Okay,
plots
so
are so
there's-
minimal that it's like there's no. We could
No.
even not discuss them, and it wouldn't make any difference.
I just want to mention brief Speedy Saru.
Oh my god, CGI Saru.
So fucking awful. Like he just looks
It was
like
stop
a-
motiony.
He looks like a white blob that they didn't get to animate properly.
He looks like a stop motion
It's
creature. It was very
so
funny.
strange because
Well, they spent all that money on the tardigrade. They couldn't afford it for Speedy Saru. And never again will we ever see Speedy Saru. Not in my memory. Maybe someone will point out, excuse me, alternative Mirrorverse Saru used the speedy ability of throw it a bitch.
So we have Saru, Michael, and Ash, and then Saru basically achieves nirvana and doesn't want to give it up.
His inhibitions have been removed from this alien species because they're perfectly
They
in
are
harmony
yeah.
and union.
then
And they
he
align him
becomes
with
part of it.
of
yeah.
their harmony.
But before
He basically gets
that-
assimilated, by the way. It's basically a collective consciousness joined in one being. He gets assimilated.
Yeah, they are the planet, as they point out.
Aren't we all?
But they use jump cuts. Ryan,
Rachel,
isn't it ever really a good idea for a TV show to use jump cuts?
sometimes it is. Don't knock jump cuts. Better Call Saul uses jump cuts. However, it is distracting
Are
of
they
a.
used well in this episode of Discovery?
To be honest, I didn't even factor them into my brain as a negative thing to write. I didn't even write. I don't even remember like.
it's just,
This episode was so. Here's one of the things that makes it
it's
so hard for me to
lazy
remember.
in that scene because they're trying to display how he's feeling disjointed and he is out of sync with the world. And then once he's joined the collective consciousness of the planet, there's no more jump cuts.
One of the reasons I'm going to be forgetting a lot of visual, like editing things in this episode is the blue filter tint constantly throughout this episode makes one's eyes visually tired. Like they just tire your eyes. You're just kind of like, oh my god, and the lens flares. And to the point in which I just don't want to look at it constantly. And I was, but my register of visual things in this episode just falter to, oh, that's the blue episode. Remember the blue episode?
I see, it's all really blue to me. I can't.
No, blue and orange. Those are the two colors in Star Trek Discovery. Blues and orange. Remember the Sarek punching Mike in the sky? That was orange. And Lethe, remember that classic episode that I should apologize to?
So this is
Sorry, Lethe.
This is the second time that we get a mid-episode flashback.
Oh my god, what is with this show and flashbacks? Like,
don't
do they
even
not know that they have a recap at the beginning of every fucking episode that I have to skip past? And that I've watched the other episodes? It's really... It feels really...
don't understand. And
I thought we moved beyond this. I thought we really, in TV terms, I thought with the fact that we live in a binge watch culture in which people have ready availability to watch these episodes again and again, and there's discussions and there's all this, that I thought we moved beyond constant use of flashback. And this isn't like, remember 2 seasons ago? This is remember 2 episodes ago level of flashbacks. It's embarrassing.
I feel like maybe the editor's just like, okay, we know that we haven't made you care, so you might have forgotten. Let's just intercut some extra footage. It'll get an extra 30 seconds in the show.
We gotta pad it.
But it's just like
We don't have time for Hugh, but we gotta pad the episode. We go to an alien planet where everything's blue. We meet a homogeneous species that are represented by blue spores that float around. Why did they choose the exact same fucking image as the spores from the Spore Drive?
They already had the asset.
They already had the asset, but isn't that fucking lazy? Like, I was instantly like, oh... I remember the first time, and this time too. I was like, "Oh, are these connected to the sport?" Like I was trying to make connections.
I did the same thing too,
but
and
in the end, it's
like,
nothing. It's just like they were lazy.
Is this a planet, like a manifestation of the spores, like
and they've
the
become sentient
potential
or something
of the spores, and like, this is the evolution and manifestation of the mycelial network. But no, that would be too interesting.
No. They're just, we've got to defend them. They just, did they make the crystal thing? We don't know. And nor, did they make the tent? Why did they have a tent?
That was just there.
Yeah, but why did they have that?
Don't
think about it. Don't think about it. They needed it for that scene so they didn't have to film outdoors anymore. Shut up.
I think the Pavovians or whatever they decide to call them.
The pervies, yeah.
The pervs were trying to be accommodating because there's also a weird sculpture with a fire-like thing.
Oh yeah, the classic Star Trek fire in which you shoot a rock and it just turns red and there's just red lighting in the scene. That means you've made fire. We've seen that done many times before.
Yeah, but we don't actually get to see that. But
it's implied.
But previously, it looked like they were sitting around
on Star Trek Discovery in a flashback halfway through the episode. He is previously on. I really wish that when they did those flashbacks, you had a narrator voice just go, previously in Saru's life. And then he just says, my people are afraid. We sense death all the time.
Previously on Star Trek Discovery.
We were biologically determined for one purpose and one purpose alone. To sense the coming of death. I sense it coming now.
We have come to Pavo for your help. We have come to end this war. I'm so afraid. So afraid.
Saru is banging on about the same fucking issue again, which is he has an inferiority complex about Michael.
Yeah.
We've already gone through this, and this episode didn't explore it in as a mature way as the previous time. And the previous time, I thought it was still done in a very immature way. This time, it's done in a boring and contrived way at the end, where it's like you. And the second problem, which is more important, is the romance aspect of this episode.
That you forgot about?
No. This is what I remember the episode for. I remember this is the romance episode.
You forgot that they made out.
Forgot they made out again, but you don't buy it. They don't spend enough time on it, and they're pretending like these have been a people who have had a long-term relationship enough to have this crisis of how are we going to maintain our love, our earth-shattering love after the war, which
when
we barely know. They barely know each other.
They
or
had
we
their
don't
first kiss last episode.
And I liked their relationship last episode. It was a good, okay, we're going to build on this. But this episode treats it as, well, that was it. We built on it. So now we've done the job in that episode. So now we can just pretend like this is the Shakespearean love story. And it's not. If
they just tweaked it a little bit so that it was more like, let's not start this because it's going to end. There's an expiry date, so it isn't worth getting invested. That would be something. This is nothing instead.
Lake's full of trout this time of year. Ever have fresh roasted trout?
I haven't.
What?
It's actual heaven.
Let's talk about Lieutenant Ash Tyler. This episode, along with our previous episodes, have meant to ingratiate us into liking Ash Tyler.
We are meant to know him and to like him and to be invested in him
as a person,
overcome his experiences and to
or having baggage still about it.
Having baggage because that is part of the conversation that he had.
I want to hurt him. I'm broody, man. I want war to continue so that I can get a fuck. Klingon's bad.
I want to
Rachel, does Ash Tyler ingratiation process work in not only the basic form of us not knowing he's a Klingon, but now in retrospect, us knowing he's a Klingon? Does it work in either fashion? Especially in this episode.
It adds a weird filter to some of the things that he says, but no.
I think this episode's really mind-boggling when you remember that this guy's a secret Klingon man.
Yeah, it makes it more strange because you question, was the writer told that was going to happen, or was this the one writer who wasn't in that meeting where they decided that he was secretly going to be a Klingon? Because some of the other writers have had little lines that link
Little
back
winky.
to that, but
Well-
this one it feels.
Well, see, I think it does
feels
relate.
weird because it does yeah, mind-boggling is really right.
I think it does relate to the secret Klingon plot when he's talking about his hatred for Klingons, because we know that Vok had a hatred for his own people, and he really wants to hurt them because they hurt him constantly in life.
And there's a frustration and a disconnect from his own. He doesn't feel like the Klingons are his people because his people were his house and Takuvma, and now all of that is gone.
Yeah.
L'Rell is the only one
Who cares?
left.
Yeah, and
Ash isn't at the point where
He knows
has
that.
a consciousness of that. So it's just the implanted
memories
and
bullshit.
the effect of still having, I don't know, would you say
Vok.
his subconscious bubbling away? But
Yeah, probably.
That feels
Who knows?
wrong to say because it's not Ash, it's Vok that's been turned into a version of
Ash Tyler, yeah. The issue, one of the things too that comes at an issue of this is, upon a rewatch, a part of what I think should be here, or at least somewhat is, we should feel sorry for Ash Tyler because we know at the end of the day of two tragic things, that the real Ash Tyler is dead and this is like a memory implant on Vok. The second is, we should feel sorry for Vok, because this is an outcast Klingon man who's got abandoned by his own people. He was a victim of prejudice, all this stuff. But as we've detailed in previous episodes, we don't like you don't care for Vok. He was a terrible leader and not a very good person, and he was on the side of the bad guys. He was on the side of the fanatical Klingons, who it feels like the show is saying constantly with the L'Rell plot and with him that things would have been peachy keen if they were in charge of the war, but we are on the side of the Federation, by the way, so no, it wouldn't. So it's a weird middle ground of no one's succeeding at anything when it comes to the feel sorry for Ash Tyler plot in this episode, because at the end of the day, you don't feel sorry for Ash Tyler because the actual Ash Tyler is dead. We never got to know that character. It's not like he was a previous character and then he's got swapped over. And Vok was a guy who was a fundamentalist, and a terrible fundamentalist leader.
Bad at being a leader.
Terrible. He let his people starve to death because he was just too stubborn. And that's the kind of stuff where I go, when you rewatch the Vok Ash Tyler stuff, when he's having that conversation with Saru, there is deep heady stuff, and the both of them are acting their asses off during that scene, but it means
so
nothing.
They are trying so hard because they know what this scene should be, and they have to be the mouthpieces for the writers because that's what's in the script. But they are doing their darndest to elevate that, and I really want to say that I do. I really respect them for what they're trying to do in that scene.
I mean, for me, they're just doing their jobs. They're acting.
Yeah.
I don't want to give them a medal. They're just acting here, and they're doing a sufficient enough job. Doug Jones is cranking it up to 11 because he's all crazy.
Where is Burnham? Where has she gone?
And that's it. I have really nothing else to say about old Blue Ball Planet. It is just a boring, lifeless world in which everything's got a tinge of blue, and it's not like the race is interesting. They're a non-race.
And I think we've said enough about the subplots in our discussion of things where things were crossed over. So I'm ready to just quickly and frustratingly do the Hudar.
Whoa, you don't want to talk about L'Rell? You don't want to talk about that great character L'Rell and how she tried to underhandedly deceive Cole, and then he saw through that shit easily and has imprisoned her. You don't want to talk about Laurel and that great admiral character who I honestly did like on my first watch up until a point.
There's one thing that I would like to, I guess, query.
Well, she does have a nice scar. They point that out, just in case you forgot that was her, like Ryan did on the first watching of this episode. Because I remember when she rocked up in her white, like in that outfit, I was like, whoa. Is that supposed to be the lady from that third episode? And it's like, yeah, Ryan, she was also in that episode where she had them prisoners. I'm like, no.
I just... So she knocks the Admiral unconscious and is... Because they get caught out trying to escape, right?
Because they were walking very nonchalantly through hallways and not at all a pace that one would use. Yeah.
No, it made no sense. But she's just like, I will dispose of the body. And she goes to a particular room where she finds the bodies of everybody that was in her house.
Was it her house, or was it particularly the ones who were the last worshippers of Takuvma? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she has her own house.
She has her
She has the house of, what was it, liars and...
Yeah, there was some bullshit.
The sisters of weavers of lies of something.
Her two parents came from different houses.
Well, we know that she's a master liar, a master tactician, a master interrogator, a master torturer. She's a master of everything except for being able to lie, evidently, enough.
She's the Klingon, Michael. It's fine.
It's true. It is fine.
But is that just the dumping room?
Well, yeah, I guess. Cole just likes to dump them in the sarcophagus room.
Yeah, is that just where everybody knows to dump the bodies? Because
she knew.
It was like, otherwise she wouldn't have discovered that.
In Discovery?
Okay, time for the Huda.
Whoa. Before we jump into the Huda, I do want to say one thing more about one of the subplot, which is...
Release me from this
Tilly was in this episode.
Oh, and she says who she is again.
No, we do get a little hint with Paul about him being muddled up about what knowledge he has. It seems like to me, and again, I can't remember if this is followed through on, but is he good at getting knowledge from the Mirrorverse? Because he calls her Captain, and we know that she's a Captain Tilly in the other universe, and I'm wondering if that's a reference to that, or did he think that she was Lorca? I'm going to go with that it's a Mirrorverse stuff because we know that he's using that to flip over to the Mirrorverse later.
Yeah, I think it's a Mirrorverse thing because
That's a nice little...
It's not a time-related thing because they haven't really touched on
Not yet.
if the mycelial network you can use to travel
through
time.
we know, Rachel, we do know that because by the end of the series, they come back 9 months later or however long later so that the Federation could be nearly killed by the Klingons, remember? How could you forget? Where they time travel forward after coming back from the Mirror Universe.
I thought I prefaced that with, like, at this stage.
Oh, at this stage. Soz. Rachel, I think we can hear the Huda. It's Hugh. It's the Huda. Hugh's here for an episode of Star Trek Discovery. He's such a great character that they resurrect him from the dead because he was so prevalent in Season 1, or at least prevalent enough to warrant being back in a congratulatory fashion. Hugh's here.
One line. And
keep it brief.
Under 30 seconds of screen time.
Keep it brief. Oh, Rachel. He did nod and smile, though. No. He nodded and frowned.
Yeah.
But he did nod, though.
Yeah, he did.
Thank Christ. I wouldn't recognize him without a nod.
He's keeping that nod streak up.
So what did we learn about Hugh this episode, Rachel?
That even when his patient is in distress, he will still let them be spoken to and interrogated.
Interrogated? You mean talk to? What I learned about Hugh was from...
And also he will not supervise that, but to give a moment of privacy.
Well, he's a good doctor, you see.
He's a great doctor. He's a great doctor. He loves what he does. It's wartime. You know, it's pretty important to keep people alive. Sometimes I fail. There's only so much I can do, even in the future.
Are we going to touch on the inferences about Hugh that were also made by Stamets?
That's what I was going to talk about. Because Hugh in this episode doesn't do anything, and we don't learn anything about him from himself. We just know that he nods, and that's it. He says, keep it brief, and that's it. We don't get anything from him because he's a non-character. But, oh, don't worry, guys. He is a character because he's Paul Stamets' partner, and he's one of the first, openly gay characters in Star Trek, and that's a big win, except we're going to kill him later, except for, no, we're not. We're going to bring him back and pat ourselves on the back because we brought back that favorite character, Hugh, the one that has so much character that 8 episodes in, he's probably had, let's be generous and say a paragraph of dialogue. Let's be generous. Generous, Rachel. Generous. But in this episode, we learn a little bit about him from Paul again. And I'm very confused,
Okay,
Rachel. I'm very confused.
I'm interested to see what you think we learn about him, because I don't think
I understand.
I don't think it actually told us anything, because it just well, you go ahead.
Well, there's a contradiction. So Paul states that if he goes to Hugh about his medical problems, Hugh will then have to escalate those medical problems to Starfleet, which in turn will reveal the fact that Hugh has open knowledge and allowed... wait, hold on. For Paul to genetically engineer and whatever himself, and that Starfleet will then take him away and put him in a laboratory, and Hugh would then lose his job. But if Hugh doesn't know, and something happens with Paul, Hugh will still get in trouble and be mad because Paul didn't talk to him about it. But the issue that is at hand is, it is stated Starfleet does not... What it's saying, that scene is saying is, Starfleet doesn't know about Paul Stamets, although we were told explicitly episodes ago that Starfleet knew about Paul Stamets and what happened there, and that the admirals were very angry about it, but they accept it.
The admirals talked about that.
Admirals. Who are in what, Rachel? What organization are the admirals in? They're in a little thing called Starfleet. So
no, that's not right. It can't be that. I know that they say Starfleet things and they use Starfleet terminology, but I don't know that it doesn't.
So who are going to be taking? Who's going to be removing?
Okay.
So if the admirals of Starfleet know about Paul, then who's going to get in trouble for the revelation that Paul exists as a bioengineered product for the machine?
I don't think
understand.
it was that. I thought it was that Starfleet is aware that he's done the eugenic manipulation, but they are not yet aware of the ongoing consequences, which is that he's getting disorientated and not knowing when or where he is.
Why would that cost Hugh his job?
No, that wasn't the part that would lose Hugh his job.
What was then?
That was the one where, so if he goes to Hugh and says, I'm having these problems...
Hugh would then have to escalate it.
Hugh would have to escalate it, and then he would be taken away to get the care that he would need.
At the labs, but then they
stated that... At the labs,
that
away from Discovery. The second option...
is if Hugh doesn't know...
Is if he tells Hugh...
Oh?
And Hugh doesn't tell anybody else...
Oh, right.
Then he will lose his career.
Oh, okay. My biggest issue was...
It's such a convoluted way of just doing a damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
As a medical officer, it would be his duty to report the effects of my genetic manipulation
I'd be sent to a Federation lab to be poked and prodded. On the other hand, if he doesn't tell and Starfleet finds out, his career would be ruined.
Other than that, that's the end of the episode, huh? There's nothing else to talk about with Star Trek Discovery Episode 8. Rachel, what would you rate it? A yum meaning bad and a yum yum meaning good.
Yum.
Why?
Because it's not good.
That's good. I rated a yum too. Because it's the most boring episode thus far, and in my brain it continued to be the most boring episode. So, Rachel, next week, or next episode at least, we will be watching Season 1, Episode 9, Into the Forest I Go. Is that an Alice in Wonderland reference?
Probably.
Well, the plot description is very neat.
It seems more like a Red Riding Hood thing.
Well, Rachel, that doesn't line up with Michael. It has to be an Alice in Wonderland reference.
But I was going to say that there is a forest in Alice, so...
Who knows? Only Michael knows. So the synopsis goes as such. Bypassing Starfleet orders, Lorca uses the USS Discovery's crew's ultimate asset, the ship itself, in an effort to end the war with the Klingons once and for all. So, Rachel, you looking forward to some boom boom? Because that sounds like a boomy boomy. Boom boom boom. Stab stab. That's Klingon. That's Klingon for boom. That's Cole. Rachel, you look so disgusted. Rachel, thank you for joining me in this discussion of Star Trek Discovery. We got quite heated on what was a very dull episode. Like, when I sat down, I was like, wow, I think we're going to be pretty quick with this one. This one was quite a juiceless episode, but you wanted to rush through it, and I was like, no, Rachel. How dare we rush through this? That's what the show wants us to do. It wants us to not think about it. It's like taking a psychic speed of hit. No, it's like taking a psychic hit of speed, as Stamets said. See, my brain, it's already falling apart. Now, for those listening, still, you can find us on the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, under Yum Yum Pod or Yum Yum Podcast very easily, posting some fun stuff on there. We are on all the podcatchers available, so rate, review us, share us around, because why not? It could be fun. You know, maybe give us a yum yum instead of a yum as a rating. I don't know. Look, I feel as if iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Google Play or any of these ones that allow ratings have moved beyond the 5-star ratings to yum or yum yum. That's how it affected the world, Rachel. Through ratings, of course. Duh. We also have our email, in which you could email us with your thoughts, questions, concerns, threats. Tell us how we're right. Tell us how we're wrong. Tell us, does the show make you feel yum or yum yum? What character's the sexiest? I'm curious, Rachel. At this point in the show, out of the characters we've met, who's the sexiest character to you?
Lorca.
Why? Because he's fucked? Is that the reason? Because he has on screen, we have confirmed he has had sex? Is that why he's sexy? Or do you like an older, gruff man with fucked up eyeballs?
I already find the actor sexy.
Jason Isaacs, oh yes.
That is
when you watched Harry Potter, you creamed your jeans when he came on screen with his little blonde hair wig, huh? When he was threatening Harry Potter with that cane, that was very phallic. You're like, daddy, likey. I think one of the sexiest characters in this show...
You did that. I blame you.
Rachel, you missed your opportunity. The answer.
No, I'm done.
The answer's.
I'm done. This episode is over, Ryan. Bye-bye. No. Thank you for joining us. This is the end of Yum Yum Pod forever. This episode has ruined this entire show. Goodbye.
The answer's Hugh, by the way. He's the sexiest because he smiles and nods, and there's nothing sexier than a smiling, nodding man.
I said it's over, Ryan. I said it's over.